Well, here goes nothing, ladies and gentlemen, to the next Mr. GLOAT podcast, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to review UFC 5, and I have a bunch of water to drink right now, so I had to swish my head back with soap on my head before I even go in the shower. So this might be part one or even part two of everything here. I am going to make this the one full podcast, ladies and gentlemen. This is UFC Ultimate Fighting Champion, the Gracie versus Shamrock 2, or as some people would call it, the Return of the Beast. Whatever you people like to call it, people would call it whatever. So guys, before we get to information about UFC, and even though this podcast, I'm only going to talk about the alternate bouts, well, not much. One of the bouts has nothing to do with it, but the other does, so for the heck of it. And I'm also going to talk about the quarterfinal bouts. The semifinal bouts I might talk about some other time, but I'm just trying to save up gigabytes for my phone here before my phone goes off, because this might be a 2-hour podcast, and you know what? It's probably for the best to just let it go that way. And after just watching some episodes of Beverly Hillbillies on my TV screen, yes, I am watching old stuff, but it's probably for the best to talk about it while watching some of it while I'm talking about this. Guys, I really did not want to watch this. It's really bad. So guys, April the 7th, 1995, live in the Independent Arena in Charlotte, North Carolina. 6,000 attendance with a 260,000 buy rate. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a legitimately an end of an era here, because this would be the last ever UFC event with the co-creator of Rory and Gracie, where it stated that ostensibly as the introduction of all time limits, because at the time, which ran, well, technically Rory and Gracie would be out, and due to his family and the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the time with Gracie and his partner Art Davie, would later sold the WOW promotion, which was which was some other type of promotion at the time. I'm still trying to look up what it is, with partners of Semaphore Entertainment Group. And this would also end up Royce Gracie ending his involvement with the Rorians' departure for UFC for the next 55 UFCs until UFC 60, when he would come back in a devastating loss in his career. Yeah, but technically, we're not going to get to that, guys. As this is the end, this is legitimately an end of an era for UFC, because this would be the end of the Gracie name here. But tournaments would still be a factor here. So, guys, as for UFC 5, ladies and gentlemen, just like UFC 1, information would stay here. UFC 5 was the first UFC event to feature any kind of time limit since UFC 1. Where a 20-minute time limit was imposed for the quarterfinals and semifinals round matches to the tournament, the finals of the tournament, and the Super Fight tournament, which is a title for the inaugural Super Fight Championship of UFC. And the tournament final would be 30 minutes. But of course, if any particular incident, if past 30 minutes, they'll give a fighter an extra 5 more minutes, if any further. And if they go past 5 more minutes until the 35-minute mark or 36-minute mark, the match will be declared a draw. There is no judges. The fight's weighing for classes where mostly that's just the thing. Like I said before, the towel, if you can throw in the towel with knockout, the referee will stop the fight. No judges would be used for this. Like I said, no time. There is no... the tournament has no weight classes or weight limits. The fights have to end in submission, and as said before, and the other stuff, throwing towels, stoppage, everything about that. The tournament would receive $50,000 for the winner, and whoever wins the tournament will go to UFC 6 to take on the champion, if it's Ken Shamrock or Royce Gracie, to defend their super fight champion. Yeah, that's not going to go well, but the tournament fighter will fight for anyone. But because this is the end of the Gracie family name, so let's just assume that Ken Shamrock might get another match for it. Who knows? And also, guys, this event will also have many fighters receive their famous nicknames. This would be the first time Dan Severn would be known as the Beast. We have a Russian fighter named Oleg Takhtarov, the Russian Bear, Todd Medina, El Tiburon, Joe Charles, the Ghetto Man, which is pretty funny, John Hess, the Giant with an Attitude. Also in history, guys, we do have alternate bouts of Dave Benetio and Asbel Cancillo and Guy Mesger and John Dowdy in alternate bouts. And mostly that would be it for competition. Also, guys, keep this in mind. During the time for UFC 4 in November at the time, the WWF already had, I don't know if I talked about this during the last UFC, Bret the Hitman Hart would lose against a past prime fighter in Survivor Series 1994 with Bob Backlund. 3 days later, he went to a house show and got pinned by Diesel in 8 seconds to become heavyweight champion. And that would be the last time WWE would ever have a house show title change in history for the WWE title or any other title at that moment. And of course, Diesel, not fake Diesel, I wish, would actually hold on to the title until next Survivor Series with Bret the Hitman Hart. Around this time, guys, Paul Heyman already bought out ECW from turning it to Eastern Championship Wrestling to Extreme. So, with everything going on, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be an interesting change to know how that is going to go, because for the heck of it, there will be interesting moments where you might think to yourself, this might be bad or might be good. Who knows? But yeah, guys, before we get to it, let's just get into the first bouts. So the first alternate bouts, which aren't really part of the show as much. So technically the first bout, as said before, Dave is a Canadian fighter with a judo wrestling career, and his component, Cancillo, a year older than him, is a Wing Chun Kung Fu fighter, which I don't know much about. The fight went on, and at this moment, I'm just going to skip the commentators for now before we get to them, before the show opens. Let's just say that the fight starts out not good. Mostly, we have Dave taking down his opponent the first seconds of the fight, and he locks in some punches and such, and going on top of him, slamming punches, punch after punch from his right. And like I said before, Big John McCarthy, or I think some other person, because someone had blonde hair, and so I don't think John McCarthy was a referee at the time, punched him a bunch of times and ended the fight in 21 seconds. So Dave wins the alternate bout, which means if any fighter in the quarterfinals got injured from advancing to the semifinals, he'll be in the semifinals, which is probably good to see him last 21 seconds, because you have to take some of that for the heck of it. Guy Mesger would defeat John Dowdy in 2 minutes and 1 second by similar fashion, by TKO and punches. Only this time, so guys, here's the thing about this fight. John Dowdy was a 42-year-old Hapkido fighter with Guy Mesger, a 26-year-old kickboxing fighter, and this guy, like, I don't know how to explain it. John Dowdy had this black like karate gear on, and he stands with his foot here, and he lifts up his knee sometimes to scare his opponent off, and it's so awkward. It just goes to show you what UFC was back then. Like, he twisted his leg or something, and his opponent, Guy Mesger, would go in for the attack. I'm like, yeah, this is so dumb. Like, the 26-year-old guy had an easy win here. It was so ridiculous that I really couldn't explain how funny it was. to watch this because it just made me laugh my butt off so much. And John Dowdy would try to bring the guy down, lay on his back, but that was a big failure after 1 minute in the fight or 40 seconds in the fight. And then suddenly, like, John decided to go down on the ground and pull him down with him, but that was a fail, and tries to pick up his legs to grab on to squeeze his head with his legs. And it was such a, I don't know what the 42-year-old guy was thinking of. It's just, oh my gosh, the fight was just so bad. Oh boy, you have no idea. Like the 2-minute fight was just so, I don't know what to say. It was just like a ridiculous, it was just a ridiculous show with ridiculous stuff. And I just, yeah, I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say about this. It was such a bad fight that it's even hard for me to even look back at it. It's that bad. And eventually, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about this charade of bullcrap. I don't know what to say. It's so bad. Like, this 42-year-old guy became a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. And the fight ends when Guy Mesger is punching him slowly with his right, and then as he's studying to punch him again, letting the referee know that the guy's defenseless, he pulls him off and stops him. It's so bad. I really don't know what to say about it. And for reasons for all the stupidity, it was just a horrible, horrible show from the start. Yet again, the fights ended quickly, so we didn't have to worry a lot about that. But yeah, it was, funny or not, all I can say is it had its own moments and such. And at least all the fighters, well, you know what? At least they had something to deal with. But I guess it's great that that everyone didn't get hurt. So now we'll get back at it. It is what it is. So anyway, guys, the package opens up, ladies and gentlemen. So technically, the package opens up, ladies and gentlemen, with UFC, where the package opens up from all of the first 4 UFCs from picture to picture. We get some pictures such as no escape, blood, sport. It was just like they show us pictures, video footages of the past since November with Ultimate Fighting Champion, the greatest of all time, the 5th UFC, 5. And then we finally get some real footage of the footage opening up with a cameraman showing us the statue of the Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina, named after Queen Charlotte. And kind of makes sense why Ric Flair's daughter, Ashley Flair, would later become Charlotte in the WWE. So, hey, good for her. But no, she's not the wife of England's King George III. But yet again, it's funny to think about it. But yes, they also point out for commentators, like the 2 largest banks dominated with the city skylines with magnificent football stadium of the NFL's Carolina Panthers. And tonight, the Independence Arena, 6,000 fans from Charlotte Coliseum with the toughest fight of all time, ladies and gentlemen. The ring announcer, Rich Goins, is still there, but does he still have his mustache on? Well, who knows? And we also have brought back Bruce Beck to be in the commentary booth for this night today, talking about with the 8 different fighters from different disciplines of competition, from judo to Jet Kudo, square to the tournament, with $50,000 and even other moments of wrestling, kickboxing, etc., etc. And he also talks about the 3-time defending champion, Royce Gracie. They call it Royce with an H, but I say Royce because it's with an R. But Brazilian names are different and other names around the world, so yeah. And they're also going to talk about him versus Ken Shamrock, who lost only once in the Octagon in UFC 1, where Gracie came out of nowhere as the greatest to become 3-time champion. And then they bring in the broadcast team for the gold medal of the 1984 Los Angeles Olympic Games for the super heavyweight Greco-Roman wrestling with Jeff Blotnick. Also inside the octagon, giving us further information. He gives us information, and I will say, though, guys, the new commentators, it is hard to get used to it, so I guess it made sense why I stopped watching the old UFC shows until before UFC 5, because, like, it's great that Jim Brown is still there, UFC Hall of Famer, NFL Hall of Famer, he's still there, so it's great he's still there. So, but of course, Jeff Blotnick tells us 32 feet across, measures from the octagon, surrounded by 5 feet high chain link fence that is both reinforced and padded for safety, and standing to the spot where Dan Severn submitted to Royce Gracie in the finals of UFC 4. But Severn returns here tonight for UFC 5 in vengeance with his first bout against the Ghetto Man, Joe Charles. The first time we ever heard that. He is the person that had the quickest match in UFC history. And if you viewers don't believe that, we can go back to UFC 4, where Joe Charles took on a sad fight against Kevin Rozier in 14 seconds. Yep. Rest in peace to Kevin Rozier. Yeah. Not good. Not good. But with the contestants of competition from long bouts, with the X factor of Oleg Tarkov, another guy from Russia, that's the new fighter, a Sambo fighter, he points out, and other individual top fighters from unknown places. So, yeah, we have a new Russian fighter in competition, even though I wouldn't say that as much because, like don't get me wrong, like Tarkov is a tough fighter, but does he have what it takes to become champion? Well, he might have what it takes to make it to the finals, but we're going to have to wait and see about that. Anyway, guys. But anyway, standing next to our other commentator is Jim Brown of the Professional Football Hall of Famer. It's great to see him again. It's great to see Jim Brown back, talking about the biggest groups ever seen at 230 pounds on average. And then Jim Brown comes in and says, well, it might not mean anything. Everything being equal weight is a factor. And to take quickness from techniques like Gracie, like he's not a big man. And then the guy next to him points out, well, Dan Severn is no doubt favorite in UFC 5. Lost to Royce Gracie in the finals in UFC 4. What are your thoughts? And then Jim says, well, my thought is the first fight is going to tell us what it's going to do for the Ghetto Man and the fights and what the super fight between Royce and Ken is going to be, and how Shamrock was being here before and he couldn't do it. So he has never been defeated in the ring before. Royce hasn't. He does have the techniques and has the background he has and character for courage. So technically, it might be a good fight. And like I said, the rules come in. They give us the rules of competition. No biting, no eye gouging, no rounds. Like I said, 20 to 30 minutes for time limit, 20 minutes for quarterfinals and semifinals and alternate bouts, and 30 minutes for the finals of tournament and the champion. So that's all you have to know. That's all you have to know. And like I said, you have to win by knockouts, submission, corner throws in the towel, or the referee of John McCarthy could stop the fight if he wants to. So, who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But yes, they show us information from fighters to fighters, and we just get on with it just for the heck of it. So the first bout for competition will be John Hess and Andy Anderson, Todd Medina and Larry Kurton, and Oleg Taktarov versus Ernie Verdicchia, and Dan Severn versus Joe Charles. They show us the alternate bouts where alternate matches of Dave Benettio and Guy Mesger already got their wins. So, it's going to be great. And I can't believe it's been almost 20 minutes since I started this podcast, so I'm going to be really, really tired. But you know what? It's great to take a break once in a while before we get to that. Like I said before, guys, Big John McCarthy will be refereeing for this show. And for some reason, like I said, there was some other random referee at the time that was there. So we'll see what happens. And then they also show us Dr. Richard Estricio, a medical advisor for some reason after they showed us Big John McCarthy. He was the advisor for WBC and the New York State Athletic Commission and medical director for the New York Golden Gloves, which is pretty interesting. He's been around the sport for 18 years. And then the camera pans to Ron Van Cleef, the guy that lost against Gracie a few months ago. He is now the IFC commissioner. And Ron is talking to someone with him like this with his head turned. And he turns around, looks at the camera, and he smiles with the camera looking at him there, which is pretty great to see that. And for some reason, he might have said something to the camera, man, but it's great to see Ron Van Cleef is doing okay. He's not hurt. He's happy to be there and for the heck of it. So, yeah, it's great. It's great. So the first match of competition, ladies and gentlemen, Andy Anderson, who holds the 5th degree black belt in Taekwondo and is ranked of the Hapkido Karate of Aikido. Andy has a record of 86 wins in bare knuckle challenge. Bare knuckle. Yeah, guys, back in those days, bare knuckle wasn't really an active sport as much because in bare knuckle boxing, back in those days, after 1889, which was the last major fight for, John Sullivan. Yeah. Back then, even in the UK, people just start bare knuckle boxing near facilities or abandoned or outside areas or in warehouses where there's a bunch of hay bales. That's like a 4-squared ring of hay barrels where people fight in boxing. Of course, in 2018 is when American bare knuckle boxing would become major for the first time in over 119 years. But yeah, I tried to look up Andy Anderson's record about this, but 86-0 at the time, 86 by knockout. I can't really find the information of that, but yeah. All they know is they call him the Hammer. And he's from Arlington, Texas, and he's always somebody bigger and better and stronger and tougher. And he came to UFC tonight, and just for the heck of it. But guys, 86-0 doesn't mean you... At the end of the day, I really can't say much about Andy Anderson other than that's the information. But of course, later the night after this fight would be different. But to be honest, guys, this was actually a pretty fun fight. So technically, the commentators pointed out that he's going to work on his left hook and left cross, which means he might be an orthodox or a southpaw fighter. You have to think of that yourself. He wears some interesting strapped and colorful pants of gray, black, and white stripes or something. They say that he works in a steakhouse in Longview, Texas. And then they meet John Hess, the black belts of Kung Fu Karate Jiu-Jitsu and the co-founder of his own fighting system of the ASAFTA at 6'7", 295 pounds. There's a good reason why he's called the Giant with an Attitude. So, yeah, he's John Hess. And guys, John Hess is going to have an amazing night in UFC 5, but he is going to lose money after this fight. But he will get a great moment of the show. After UFC Encyclopedia already had their awards for the best knockout of the night, if people didn't know that, because in October of 2011, Encyclopedia already had the UFC Encyclopedia of the best moments of every show, and technically I'll get to that some other time, which is funny, but yet again, it'll be too much information if I do talk about that, but technically, let's just say this will be one of the awards for the fight just for the heck of it. So, yes, so they show us the tail of the tape of the fighters entering the ring, but for some reason, as they're talking about it, the SAFTA and Taekwondo. Andy is 31 years old, 6 years older than John. He's 5'9", not taller than 6'7" John. Jon. He's 238 pounds, and Arlington, Texas, and California. So yeah. But that doesn't mean that even if it's a bare knuckle fighter, that depends. Like 5'8", 230 pounds, that is an overweight type of person. But yet again, just because you're in the bare knuckle boxing business doesn't mean that Taekwondo fighters can still find that leverage just for the heck of it. And I think that's something we have to learn about. And by the way, guys, now I just realized Rich Goins is not part of UFC 5, unfortunately. Or maybe he was. I thought he was. But the commentators point out that we're going to go to ring announcer Ron Jeremy. And Ron Jeremy announces the fighters. And that's about it. With Bruce Beck and Jeff Blatnick being involved in commentary, with Bruce Beck being the announcer of play-by-play and Blatnick being the color commentator, Ron Jeremy, well, the way with his blonde, short-out hair and the way he swayed his hair back, I wouldn't really say much about him announcing the fighters. I really can't say much about it. But yeah, they announced the fighters, they announced each fighter for competition, and that's about it. So before you know it, you come into competition to fight as your best as you can. And like I said before, guys, the fights start on where they announce the fighters, and then all people leave the ring, and then, Big John McCarthy comes in and tells the fighters to start fighting. And what's crazy, guys, this is almost like Mike Tyson versus Peter McNeely. Only this time, it's different. Because the funniest moment about this is so bad. So John Hess at 6'7" runs straight after Andy Anderson and gives him a left knee, punches, grabs him, and just throws punch after punch, and scoring. He's scaring off Andy Anderson. Andy's trying to escape the cage. And then he tries to grab John Hess while John is just elbowing him after his back and grab, and then he finally puts him down and he slams with his knees on the ground and finally pulls some grappling holds on him. It was, Jesus, the first 20 seconds were so scary. It made you wonder. Guys, Andy Anderson, 86-0 in bare knuckle boxing, and he gets outplayed by this and he was 5'8" with John Hess at 6'7". Yeah. And the problem was he's a kung fu fighter. And even though they did say that Andy Anderson was a Taekwondo fighter, but because they said that he was bare knuckle fighter and he gets outplayed by that, the first minute, he's trying to escape the hold. And at 1 minute, he finally escapes. And then John gives him another hard elbow to the back of his head. Jesus. He's grabbing him, he's holding, he's throwing left kick back slowly, and Jesus, it was so messed up. And at 1 minute and 15 seconds, he finally throws another right kick, left kick, pushes him to the fence, punch after punch after punch, and down goes Andy, and now he's trying to stomp on him, and Big John McCarthy stops it at 1 minute and 23 seconds. Oh, God almighty. It was such a dirty fight. I didn't like it, and yeah, I don't know what to say. That was the whole... Guys, John Hess got his money's worth, but to be honest, he would actually lose money after this fight. And to be honest, the UFC Encyclopedia of October 2011, when the following fighters, where they made the title book of it, made this the knockout of the night. Which... I could agree with that, even though the semifinals had their own TKOs, but and while the other fights in the other quarterfinals would all be submissions, but yeah, technically I wouldn't blame him. So yeah, 1 minute 23 seconds, he gets a good bout, and technically Andy Anderson gets up, he checks out his face, and his right eye is squinged, meaning it might be a little bit swelled up here a little bit. and his right eye's shut. So yeah, and Big John raises the hand of John Hess, and he goes from corner to corner from Octagon and gives him the win. And it looked like Andy Anderson was about to give him a handshake or something, but yeah, it doesn't give him. And yeah, it was bad. Yeah. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, they point out so much. Like, coming out with nothing, like, the commentators already pointed out he came out with nothing but fury. He didn't wait. He gave his opponent no chance. And he didn't know the techniques and that he used, which was Anderson they were talking about, with lots of elbows. They show us replays of those horrific elbows and slams he was throwing with his opponents, and reestablished himself on top. And yeah. And of course, Jim agreed with what Bruce said about that. And like, jeez, I don't know what to say. This was the most dirtiest. Like, at least it wasn't a cheatsy fight like in UFC 4 when Keith Hackney won the quarterfinals when he was throwing groin punches to Joe Son before the end of the fight. He was punching him in the balls. That was a dirty fight. This was a fury of devastation. But still, throwing back elbows to the back of someone's head? Jesus. It was, yeah. Yeah. Like, and they even pointed out that seeing, and it's kind of interesting because one of the commentators pointed out that he told Jeff Blatnick, as he sees what Hess sends Anderson head into the fence, to the wire fence, and stomping on him pretty good, and while he went down, like, those punches, when they were on their feet, yes, spelled doom for Andy Anderson, which is not wrong. And then the camera cuts to a ring card woman with a UFC shirt. And guys, if someone can show me, if someone has one of those white shirts that the woman was wearing for UFC 5, can someone show pictures of that? Or else someone like something, because I did not know that those things were real. Pretty interesting. Still. But unfortunately, guys, as for competition-wise, after this fight, guys, John Hess would actually, let's just say that, guys, that John Hess would have broken his hand during the match, which is even worse. And it also stated that Hess was fined $2,000 for fouls committed in the fight, where he withdrew due to the hand injury, which means Dave Benatiu or Guy Mesger would be in the fight. Well, Dave Benatiu was the first person, so... And guys, looking at the fight, yeah, seeing some of the moments, like, was he deserved to be fined $2,000? Well, when you watch the fight, it was dirty. Dirty with backs to the head and such. Yeah, it really was. But it is what it is. It is what it is. By the way, guys, while for competition, the event saw the implementation of the fight time limit, where in order to present the entire show in the allotted satellite time, which is something that WCW couldn't acquire because of their Halloween Havoc 98, the show ran 2 hours and 40 minutes, which was 40 minutes over the scheduled time limit. But UFC purchased 3 hours of satellite pay-per-view time in preparation. This was unlike UFC 4, where many pay-per-view providers cut the show off after the first 2 hours. So I think it was a great thing they did that, but for the heck of it, they need to make a whole lot of other stuff in this case, because the next, the later in the night, it's just going to get worse. So anyway, guys, after having a little bit of talk after talk, ladies and gentlemen, they give us another promo package. Todd Medina, a 24-year-old guy, a fighter representing for UFC with Bruce Lee's system of Jeet Kune Do, with his friends of Chemo and Joseon. Todd says that when he steps into the octagon, all his power will come from the Lord. Again, I'm tired of the Lord. Chemo Lepardo did better than anything else. Like, yeah, so I don't know what to say about it. So Tom Medina comes in. I'm fighting UFC 5 using the Gundo concepts, Filipino martial arts, and points out that he's ready to step into the octagon. Tom Medina, the El Tiburon, wherever you like to call him, or people call him the Chiburon or something, but it commences with a T, so who knows if I'm right or wrong. But yes. So technically, the commentators point out that while he's stepping into the ring with Bruce Lee's system, he was a small kid in Santa Ana, California, growing up with the youngest and smallest in his neighborhood, and he was always stood up to guys, never backed down, and he was in his first, and now he's in competition to work in UFC. So whoever wins this will fight with John Hess, or as I already pointed it out, David Benatiu, whoever his name is. And then they bring in the next fighter in the promo package, Larry Curtin, a ranked fighter of Taekwondo, karate, Western boxing, and kickboxing. At 20 of his 26 victories, he has 23 were by knockout. Tonight, we'll find out just why they call him the Thunderfoot. And yeah, they point out his name, and I have an itchy nose right now for some reason. He was at the Jersey City Fire Department, he pointed out, and this time he's going to take off his gloves and stepping into the octagon as I'm knocking somebody out. So Larry Curtin is a kickboxer, and looking back at it, guys, kickboxers have had a tiny bit more success than boxers in UFC. So, but will this be a better performance than the last fight? Well, who knows? So they come in. Tom Medina's 260, 5'10". Larry 6'2", 230. He's 35 years old, 11 years older than Todd. So that might point out a fact. Old fighters aren't really in competition, even though Gerard Gorget had some easy wins in UFC 1 with the sumo fighter Tylee Tui and Kevin Rozier, which are guys that are not alive anymore. So yeah, and it's interesting, guys, because even the ring announcer called Todd Medina the El Turon. So technically, who knows? Who knows? I even tried to look up closed captions on YouTube, and technically, the closed captions were somewhat accurate. Like, people just don't know how to call Todd Medina's nickname, like, other than El Tiburon or El Turon or El Tiburon or Chiburon. Like, it's a really hard name for me to know what his nickname is. So they come into the fight. Both guys study each other, and Todd, I'll just call him, he takes down his opponent in the first seconds of the fight, grabs him, shoves him to a cage, and Larry puts a headlock on him while he's on the bottom. And with 20 seconds of the fight, Todd is throwing weak body punches to his liver, or Todd is throwing the most weakest right punches to his, I wouldn't call his ribs, because technically they were the weak punches of all time. But then 40 seconds later, he finally tries to get off of him, and they finally wrestle themselves to the cage. And as the cameraman is looking close in, we see some guy blocking the cameraman with his gold watch, which is kind of the most funniest thing ever. Just watch back and you'll understand what I'm talking about. But then they put in more headlocks to each other, and by time going on, they start to rest. And this is the moment when viewers realize they had to end the fight early before they get injured, or take it easy because they don't want to show signs of fatigue. And I think that's the problem with these tournaments, and it was bad. So, of course, they would be on top for about a couple minutes. And then with 2 minutes and 12 seconds, Todd finally gets off his legs and now turns around, putting on some a forearm choke. And he tries to get him stuck. And Larry tried to wrap one of his right legs to get him stuck, and then that's when Tom Medina would throw a 3-punch combination to his groin, which is bad. Like, yeah, man, no wonder. This is so bad. And the midsection, it's so bad. And then seconds later, he puts back a forearm choke, and before you know it, he taps out. And before the 3-minute mark at 2:55, Big John tells him to get Todd off of him, and he makes it to the finals at 2:55. Technically, I wouldn't really say there was nothing much about this fight other than there were some interesting things. You got nothing but respect for these guys, and that's all it is. Considering you can say whatever you want to about them, like, even though like, at the end of the day, guys, it's great that they both hug it out. The referee announces the winner, and they both hug it out. And then they show us the replay at the beginning part where Ton shoves Larry to the cage and the fence and brings him down, and just shows other moments of the fight. And then shows him how he put his hands right to his neck for the forearm choke, and that's how the fight was stopped by submission. I don't know. I didn't see a tap. But I guess it was Larry's right hand, but we couldn't see the replay of it perfectly, but who knows? Anyway, guys, for the quarterfinals, winning out for competition, they cut to camera to move on to the quarterfinals where they meet their next fighter. And it's the Russian fighter of Oleg Taktarov, who comes to UFC, a hardened competitor with multiple European world titles of jiu-jitsu, judo, and who wants to win in UFC tonight. And he is the Russian Bear, the nickname of Oleg Taktarov from Russia, from Gorky. Now I live in Dallas, Texas, and the sambar of a 5-time European Jiu-Jitsu champion. It's my first time in America. Thank you. So what a great opening. He comes out to the ring feeling good about himself. He's pulling out everything. And it makes me so happy because I can't stop itching my nose. That's how happy I am to see a Russian fighter entering the ring for the first time. It's great. It's great. But it won't be great for long. And then they show a 28-year-old Ernie Verdicchia, a Florida Black Belt Association's heavyweight champion in Kempo Karate with an amateur record of 68-4, a paramedic by trade expected to lay on the hands tonight. And then he points out my name is Ernest. I am the fighting paramedic of Miami, Florida. I am a first-degree black belt. All my entourage are licensed for paramedics, and my opponents are going to need them when I'm finished with them. So not a bad statement for him, but yet again, becoming a 1-degree black belt doesn't mean that you have what it takes to take on a Russian 5-time European Jiu-Jitsu fighter. Not good, not good. Like, he is a Sambo fighter. They're both 27 years old. The height difference of 6 foot tall Russian with a 5'10" American. He's 219 pounds while Oleg is 205. So I can say this would be an even fight. It would be. So, yeah, what do I have to say about this fight? Other than they had their own moments. But I wouldn't really say there was actually any good competition because, like, guys, Ernie comes into the ring with a red shirt and black pants, so I can tell that his body, the way he's dressed, makes him not a winner. I love that they cut the camera to show the ring card girls. Oleg Taktarov is wearing a white karate suit with black belt and black pants. Long. And surprisingly, Ernie takes him down in the first seconds of fight with striking, putting in well on the abilities of Tarkov, and he puts him to the fence with his head against the fences. And his legs are spread wide, but he's trying to make sure he doesn't let go and just puts on holds, and they're wrapping their arms around each other to the fence. And after 1 minute, they're getting stuck to each other. And I'm sure there's some people out there that are watching this are like, oh boy, this is going to be a long fight. But technically it wasn't. I did not know this was going to be a quick fight, because these quarterfinal fights would go by a lot quicker than they expected. So the footwork comes in, and with almost 2 minutes into the fight, Ernie gets up and tries to punch him, let go, and now he's trying to throw punches. At this moment, Takhtarov's entire white karate suit is now open like this, like from all the stuff wrapped. It's like this, exposing his entire body, with him laying on the ground at this moment and holding him down. It just goes to show you that sometimes it just goes to show you, viewers, that sometimes those flaws can let you lose a fight. And then Ernie tries to go for a headbutt. He tries to use his headbutt as a weapon, grabbing on to the shirt of Takhtarov. And then Takhtarov comes out of nowhere at 2 minutes. He's trying to get back up. But then out of nowhere, Ernie's grabbing out part of his right karate suit like this. And oh boy, it was so dirty. But then the fight ends at 2 minutes and 15 seconds. He finally puts on the choke, and he turns around and goes a 180. And now Takhtarov is on top of him. He puts on the choke, and Ernie does not hesitate to tap out at 2:23. I will say, though, it was a great technique, and seeing Takhtarov, I will say, though, this was a great debut for him, and it was actually a pretty good win. I will give him credit. This was a much entertaining win than I expected from any other fight. And to be honest, this would actually be known as Fight of the Night. So not bad. And it would also be known as the Submission of the Night as well. So technically, Oleg Takhtarov got 2 awards that night, Fight of the Night and Submission of the Night, which, to be honest, I kind of agree. That was a great comeback and a great fight. His opponent, Ernie, was on top of him for 2 minutes, and then he rose him in a 180 and puts a choke on, and Ernie does not hesitate to tap out as he does it. Yeah, that's how dangerous it was. I will say, though, I was surprised the fight didn't last longer than I expected. Like seeing these fights not go 5 minutes is actually a good thing, because I'm actually happy that these fights are going by faster than I expected, because I am not interested in talking about a lot of this stuff. And I know I should be talking about what the commentators are talking about, but I'm thinking about saving the commentary for next time. But the commentators do point out the contract of wins of the opening round bouts, because the 4th and final match is Daniel Severn versus Joe Charles. They still call him Daniel Severn, even though that's Dan Severn's full real name. They talk about his fight for the memorable final of UFC 4 with Royce Gracie, and a closer look of Daniel Severn. The man they call the Beast at 6'2", 260 pounds from Michigan. Daniel Severn made an impression from UFC 4, and he steps into the ring with unbelievable domination wins and power, and doing body slams and knockouts and this or that, and just taking fighters down, and went 15 minutes with Royce Gracie, and how they show a huge package highlight of him taking out the guy from the semifinals, and then showing him pulling a guy up and slamming his body, which was crazy. And even though they do talk about the 15-minute match that he went with Gracie and being on top of him for a long time until the fight ended, yeah, for 16 grueling minutes of the longest match in UFC history, which, to be honest, that record is going to be broken any second now. With a 2-time champion, yeah, I'll be honest, this was actually crazy to look at. I'll be honest though, it was great. It was great. So now tonight he's about to make a point and be the strength of explosive power and masterful skill and the force to be reckoned with in the octagon, who brought across the toughest fighters from across the globe of Ultimate Fighting champions. The most of them agree Daniel Severn is the man to beat tonight, the Beast. So yeah, Dan Severn is making a huge impression. They show a guy holding on to a championship belt of the AAOU Senior and Masco Greco-Roman and such, and they point that out. He's holding on to a world championship, and I actually assumed that when I saw the belt, I kind of believed it might be the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, but that... And to be honest, I actually thought the guy holding on to the world championship might be the NWA championship belt, which is problematic. By the way, as he enters the ring, they show a sign in the crowd, a guy called Tyson versus Royce Gracie, which is actually because guys, if you people didn't know the information, they were talking about controversies that Royce Gracie already written a note for Mike Tyson that he was going to have a fight with him and Royce Gracie after he gets out of jail, but technically that would never come to place. But that would be crazy if it was true. It was true. So there's a guy in the sign in the audience with black letters of a yellow sign. And then they cut to another promo package of the Ghetto Man, Joe Charles, in a funny, interesting white suit. But I later realized I apologize for him because he can wear wherever he wants to. Yeah, Joe Charles can wear wherever he wants to. He's a guy that's coming out of competition, a man of known his love with judo, a person of a third-degree black belt in judo, and he holds black belts in Chatan and Kempo karate. He's fought with alternative of UFC 4, but finally he's fighting in the quarterfinals against a guy that is more dangerous than you ever expected. And to be honest, this is not going to be good. This is not going to be good. Yeah. So the Ghetto Man, or Ghetto Jam, which I thought one of the commentators pointed out, he comes out with his awesome suit. I will say, though, I love the way he's dressed up, to be honest. Like, someone thought it was funny looking, but nah, it's not. It's a tradition. So, hey, he can do whatever he wants to. So, yeah, they come in to tail of the tape. And like said, Daniel Severn, or Dan Severn, as said in the tail of the tape, he's 36 years old. Joe Charles is 35. Dan's 6'2", 6'1" Joe, 260 for both of them. And that's all we have to know. And Joe Charles is also from California. So, that's all you have to know. Like, watching this fight, guys, I'm expecting this fight to go not long. So Joe Charles takes off his suit. He's wearing blue trunks. And then the camera cuts to the woman holding the sign of judo, and then she backs up, and I was actually afraid she was about to trip. But thank God she didn't. They announced the fighters of the ring, and and for some reason, Joe comes in and tries to scare off Dan, and then Dan goes for a 180 and slams his body to the fence where there was an open door. And when I saw him go through the open door, I was expecting the cage door to bust open again. But no, thank God that didn't happen. But it would have happened for a third time. But no, Joe Charles' strategy of trying to attack Dan first was not a good idea. Like, yeah, it worked for John Hess, but if John Hess was fighting Dan Severn instead of Andy Anderson, 50-50 due to his height, but good luck. So yeah, comes in, Dan Severn's shoving his back to the fence and grapples. And yeah, he's just throwing out shots here and there, and it was a scary situation of what I was looking at. And about 1 minute into the fight, he finally tries to come in and tries to stop the fight. They're both grabbing on each other, grabbing the back parts of their head, and just grabbing each other. Dan finally gets up and tries to throw punches and puts him upside down while still on the fence. Joe's trainers are trying to yell at him to get some action, and then the camera cuts close to a bloody eye face of Joe Charles, and then we get an arm lock, and then around the 1 minute 30-second mark, as he's trying to get back to his back or something, Dan Severn puts a heavy shot to him and then puts on the rear naked chokehold. And as he does it, as he's trying to put on the rear naked chokehold, Joe is grabbing onto the fence for his dear life to not let go. But sadly, he lets go, and the rear naked chokehold at 138, he taps out, or 139, but either way, doesn't matter. Believe it on the TV or believe it on Wikipedia. Big John McCarthy wins the fight, and that was it. But they both hug it out at the end. It was a wonderful fight, great performance. Joe Charles showed how tough he was, but not trying to go the distance as faster as Andy Anderson did, which was the quickest he ever done. But so coming back for the second day, this is what we actually get for the start for the semifinals. So commentators point out that David, as they call him, David Bento, or that's how they call his name, they give us a replay for the fight that he fought earlier in the alternate bout. That was at 21 seconds. And then they, since Harold Howard failed to win the finals in UFC 3, now he is the second Canadian in history participating in UFC, and now he is getting a free bye for the semifinals. And the promo package starts out as this. As Canadian fighter Bento, if that's how they pronounce his name, but to be honest, I actually pronounced his name as Bennett Tiao because his last name's... So his last name is actually pronounced as Beneteau. So that's how you pronounce his name. So it's really hard for me to pronounce his name as much. So it's so hard. But anyway, so they cut to a promo package of David Bento holding several titles in judo, Greco-Roman wrestling, and powerlifting. From through the prefers to go to the ground, David says he'll go toe-to-toe with anyone. And to be honest, he's from Ontario, Canada, and for everything he's done, and hey, that's all that matters. So seeing this guy now being in competition, I will say though, they did point out that he was involved in the U.S. World Wrestling Championship of 1987 as a 4-time Canadian amateur wrestling champion. That doesn't mean that he's going to be better than other fighters in the UFC or so, but considering how he actually got his first fighter done, doesn't mean that just because you dominate a fight that's 21 seconds long, doesn't mean that you're going to dominate competition, because even Dan Severn showed us that several months ago in December or November of UFC 4, so to be honest. And by the way, every time a fighter enters the ring, the referee of Big John McCarthy comes face-to-face to him, have multiple conversations with their fighters, which, to be honest, you do that. By the way, guys, I tried to find who the referee was for the alternate bout because, like I said before, there was another referee during the alternate fights before the show, and he didn't have dark black hair like Big John McCarthy had, so... if people can give me information to know who that referee was in the alternate bouts of this UFC, let me know because I am a little bit curious. But anyway, guys, his other fighter comes in with Todd Medina. He handled barely a less 3-minute fight in his last fight. And to be honest, he's coming in here. I'm sure he might be in good shape for some of it, but these guys do know that they are going to the semifinals. Like, whatever's going to happen after this fight, they might show signs of fatigue. And to be honest, if that does happen, the odds of the other fighter entering competition in the finals, depending on if Guy Mesger is in good shape or not. But yeah, all we know is with Dave being the taller person, both guys are in their good weights of 260. And Even though Todd is 24 years old, only 3 years older than the Canadian man of ourselves, can't say much about it. But yet again, it was a pretty interesting time for me to look at this because we're already like 40 minutes into the show for the heck of it. So you look back at it and thinking, dang, this is going to be a great show. And the fight starts out, both guys go middle to middle to the ring against each other. And surprisingly, Dave goes under the legs, grabs him, and puts him down in the first few seconds of the fight. And surprisingly, like Dave Bento is putting out a really good work here. Like we get a little bit of like quick headbutts and such, which is something I'm not good for. But mostly his right arm is getting stuck, getting headlocked by Todd, and he goes on top of him and tries to put in a little bit of a chokehold on him. They also cut to ringside with his manager, Mike Yoshiki, Dave's trainer. All we can say is they've been holding on the ground. And commentators pointed out that that his trainer was the alternate in the 1988 Canadian Olympic wrestling team, which is surprising that the commentators would point that out, which at the same time, how many commentators would know this type of stuff? But yet again, do us viewers care about that stuff? Well, you viewers can decide on that if you viewers care about it, but it's interesting information for us to know. But at 1 minute and 10 seconds, Dave comes in, he tries to punch him, he gets back up, trying to grab his legs, and then Todd turns around. Not a good idea, because Dave now goes onto his back, and then, well, he turns around, and now he's on top of him again. And he's just putting out submission holds onto him, and once in a while, he tries to put in a strike. He grabs his left arm and tries to wrap his head, and he's throwing punches with his right. While still on top of him, quite frankly. And of course, Todd tries to put both of his hands like this, trying to push him out of his side and then shove him away, and that didn't do good. And at this moment, he's trying his best to do what he's trying to do. And at this moment, even the commentators pointed out that Dave is in a pretty good position, and he is. Like, he can throw strikes, whatever. And he does. He angles, he lets go and starts throwing multiple 10-punch combinations. And, well, Big John McCarthy stops it. At 2 minutes and 12 seconds of the fight, he pulls out an easy victory. And he goes high five with all of his fans. And now he's the second Canadian in history to make it to the finals in UFC. And this is the 5th UFC. So, yeah, 2 for 2 for the Canadians, make it to the final. Does he have what it takes to win? I want to wish him good luck, because he needs all the luck he can get. They show us replay. They both hug each other out. And by the way, as the fight started, they show us the replay of the takedown. There's still a female ring card girl still holding her sign up before walking out, which I actually didn't realize until watching the replay. But yeah, it was a pretty good fight. Good job for them, and technically it was pretty decent. So yeah, not bad. Oleg Tukhtarov, the Russian Bear, versus Dan the Beast Severn, or as commentators would still call him, Daniel Severn. Daniel the Beast Severn, whatever you call him. Both guys enter the ring to give themselves a good headbutt starter. And then as the Russian Bear goes to the ring, and as he's ready prepared, they give us another promo package of Dan Severn returning to the Octagon. Yep, National Wrestling Atlantic's heavyweight champion, this or that, favorite to win USC, and with everything else what happened a few months ago. And then they give him this. Hi, I'm Dan Severn. This is a guy from Coldwater, Michigan, blah, blah, blah. And yep. It doesn't matter. And again, they enter the ring again with him holding on to the belt. And then they get a little bit of a close-up on this belt here. They get a little bit of a close-up on the belt. as the camera cuts back live, and it shows the National Wrestling Alliance Championship belt of USA. So technically, the guy that was holding on to the belt, walking to the ring, was the actual NWA. So technically, Dan Severn was the NWA champion at the time. It's ridiculous that they're holding that, and the commentators even pointed that out. In Kentucky in February is the oldest wrestling organization, and he was the 1994 AOU Senior Masters and this or that. So yeah, it is crazy that you have a UFC fighter in 1995 holding on to a professional wrestling title, being held, going to the ring. That's pretty interesting because when people say, yes, wrestling is predetermined, this or that's not real, but it's, and the title belts don't mean nothing. Like, these guys aren't wrestlers, aren't athletes. They're just actors, this or that. So the belts and them don't mean anything, even if they're fame. And like, what? To be honest, does that even matter as much? Like, I would still count it as legit just for the fun of it. Just because you're a wrestler, I still think of it. And like I said, Dan is 36 years old with a 27-year-old Russian bear near him, and he's 260 pounds as well as other fighters. But Oleg Taktarov is at 205. So that's a huge understanding of what we're getting ourselves into, because it could be a close fight no matter what it is. Jesus Christ, I hate when that happens. But anyway, both fighters study themselves into the ring, and still ring card girls are still walking around. And as the fight starts, there's another female walking past them while both guys are studying themselves. They're not going for the attack, but then out of nowhere, Dan finally goes to grab, puts his knees on the ground for the first, and then grabs him, takes him down. And at this moment, now they're in a brawl for competition here. Oleg is trying to wrap his legs around him, and friggin' Dan is throwing out every single slam, shot, this or that. He is, I don't know what to say. Like Dan Severn does say that you have to go for the attack sooner than later, but you have to make sure not to, because if you actually don't go for the attack soon, then the person that might attack you first, you're going to lose. So there is some weaknesses for Dan Severn, is because he is in his mid-30s, and I do expect that a guy in his mid-30s is pretty tough to learn. And then they show us a little bit of a like they're now in the section where Taktarov's trainers are, with all the white shirts. They have ring card girls in the background watching the fight with white shirts and orange shorts. So it's like they're working at a Hooters restaurant, which is pretty appropriate at the time in 1995. So I can't say much about that. But so of course Dan Severn is in Taktarov's corner team where they are. And there's a lot of people with drinks, holding drinks in their hands outside the ring. So I'm sure people are having a good time. And Dan Severn is already having a great moment. Like, at this moment, he's starting to fight. And then at the 2-minute mark, he lets go of Taktarov's hands. His hands are like this, waiting for the moment that he stands still. Both of them are standing still for only a few seconds. And then Dan goes for another right punch and grabs and holds again. And at this moment, this was like, he's going for every single move that he can do to get him to quit. Like, at this moment, he finally gets a grab on him a little bit, starts shoving him to the fence, and Taktarov finally tries to wrap his legs around Dan. And at this moment, with everything going on, Severn is now stuck on the legs of Taktarov, still on top of him and trying to get his legs back up. And as he does, his right leg is getting caught by Taktarov while he's trying to grab his legs to pull him down. And at this moment, we're at the 3-minute mark, and this is the moment. He finally does it, but before the 3-minute mark, Dan goes for one great strike knee to his face, and now he has blood pouring on his left eye. Now Taktarov's eye is bleeding, and he's grabbing on one of the knee guards on Dan Severn's knee pads that he's grabbing. He's grabbing to shove him back. Now the commentators, the TV audience realize that his left eye is bleeding. He's got a huge gash cut. And at this moment, we now have blood shown on the carpet. Now the ring pad is finally filled with blood for the first time. Now there's blood near to the side of the cornerman of the ring. So at this moment, this is the first time we get to see blood spilt in the ring for the first time. At this moment, which goes to show you how quick these matches are. And at this moment, we're already at the 3-minute mark of this fight as we speak. Like 3 minutes, like that's pretty good for what they're doing. And I'm sure people are expecting this fight to go a little bit longer, but the blood on Oleg's eye is already getting worse. We get to the 4-minute mark. He's still on top of him, and Oleg is still trying to wrap his legs around him, and Dan cannot stop punching with his right. He finally goes down again and is trying to throw knees, strikes, and everything he can do, hammering him away. And then at this moment, due to the cut, everything goes wrong, and Big John McCarthy pulls him out. It takes him a few seconds. At this moment, John McCarthy might have realized with the blood gashed around Taktarov's face, at this moment, it was like, there's no point. So he grabbed him, pulled him out before damage can come more sooner in the fight, and around 4 minutes and 21 seconds, which is the longest fight of the entire show at this moment. But to be honest, the worst is yet to come. But yeah, I will say though, Dan Severn is putting out great performances. He's doing a tremendous job, and even his competitor had a tremendous heart and putting in good stuff, and with everything going on. And also Jeff Blatnick points out to Jim Brown that Dan is now back in the finals, and while the doctors are in the ring as they're checking up on him, with Dr. Richard Estrago in the ringside physician, with 5 other doctors at the time looking to see if the Russian Bear is doing all right. Dan Severn walks up to him, congratulates him, and sees if he's all right. And they walk out, and they show us the replay of the takedown, and they even show us the replay after he bled and showing the Russian Bear grabbing onto the knee pad of Dan Severn, which was not a good idea. Like, you're in that situation, yeah, you can tell. And I think it goes to show you that just because as a professional wrestler doesn't mean that even amateur wrestlers are still dangerous for what they are. So I think people have to understand Dan Severn, that this was a real injury of, yeah, this was a really scary incident when watching this back. But yeah, he makes it to the finals for the second time, and well, and of course Dave Bento, if that's how commentators would call him, and Dan Severn makes it to the finals. So we have 2 people that are trying to make it to the finals. So yeah, it's pretty great. So the match graphics show Dave Bento and Dan Severn making it to the finals. And then we have, oh boy, the super fight champion, Royce Gracie versus Ken Wayne Shamrock, which shows the match graphics for the super fight on top of the octagon for UFC Ultimate Fighting Champion 5. So guys, when I said that Dan Severn and the Russian Bear fight was the longest fight on the show at 4 minutes and 21 seconds, the longest fight to go almost 5 minutes, well, guys, the reason I did not want to review this event or even review UFC 5 was because of this fight. Guys, this is the worst I've ever watched in my career, and I regretted so much that I did not want to watch any of this. Never in a million years, I never want to watch this. Like, guys, when I look back at this, and I'm like, Jesus, this is so bad. So for the last 18 months, becoming the most well-known fighter of all time, as the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu has done so much, Ken Shamrock enters the ring in the octagon from Rockford, California, from the Sacramento area. his third UFC and one did not continue, is what the commentators pointed out. As a shoe fighting champion and so much to show for, enters the ring wearing a black a black robe or black boxing gear or something with a white towel around his neck. And they do call him Wayne Shamrock. Record of a 13-2 fighter, of a shoe fighting champion, a Pancray shooting champion, 13-2. With his opponent before him is in the octagon to settle out to score. But Ken Shamrock has other plans for winning, and it's boredom. So after a year and a half for this, he is not going to lose, but sadly, I don't think he's planning on winning this fight, even though he did said, "I'm here to win." So this is the biggest draw in fighting here. They're both going for the inaugural world title for UFC. And then the most dangerous man, Royce Gracie's. The Gracie train is back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the final time we'll ever see the Gracie train here again. Royce Gracie is the only person with his head on his back, holding his arms next to his other trainers, and another one behind him is massaging him. They are on the Gracie train, guys. I don't know what to say. Royce Gracie, 51-1 as an amateur, and mostly as a 3-time winner of the UFC Ultimate Fighting Champion. Also in heavyweight, Juke Jiu-Jitsu champion. They also point out last year, or a few months in November, stated that he was on his back for 15 straight minutes against Dan Severn and came out with one of the greatest wins. And at this moment, guys, that win was one of the greatest. Even though 15 minutes is a really long time, you got to give credit for what Gracie put in those techniques in the show. And guys, if there was anything I had to say about this match, if there was other stuff out there that was good or bad, well, technically, that would take me a long time to know about the positives about this match and the negatives, because there's more negatives than there is, in my opinion, just because this match is 36 minutes long. And like I said before, guys, there is no judges and there is no scores for anything. And I wish guys, I wish they also had to make up a rule here, because it was like, I wish they came up with a rule with telling them, okay, the referee will judge who the winner is. Or they should have done something to know who the winner was. So yeah, they point out UFC 3-time champion Gracie, the only man who have fought in 4 fighting events, and this would sadly be his second to last in history. 4th degree Dan black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's never been defeated in the octagon, but man, oh man, it's gonna be dumb. So he points out he's from Rio de Janeiro again, and tonight I'm going to fight one man that won't be any problem. I beat him before, and I'll beat him again. Good luck. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. So shoe fighting champion versus Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Ken Shamrock as 31 years old with Royce Gracie at 29 years old. Their heights are around 6'1" and 6 foot. Gracie taller than him, but 205-pound Ken Shamrock with a 180-pound Royce Gracie. So that's all you have to know. And yet again, guys, Gracie with black belt on, strapped with a white black robe and such, a white robe with black belt. And of course, announcer announces the fighters of the show, and they announced everyone else. They announced the referee, Big John McCarthy, is the referee of this fight. If you don't know that before, because he's refereed every single fight, except the alternate bouts. And they say at this moment, we just welcome Ken Shamrock and Royce Gracie. Royce Gracie has a mouthpiece, just like the guy that's like Jimmy Smith, the guy that became the boxer that got knocked out from having his weird techniques of throwing punches in the famous line of "I fall and I can't get up" by one of the commentators. Yeah, how many people remember that fight by that boxer named Jimmy Smith, the man that was holding his mouthpiece like this? Like, the guy was holding his mouthpiece like right here, just biting onto it before the corner, and the referee telling both guys the instructions to know this or that. Oh, okay, fight, come queen, and this or that. Like Ken Shamrock is biting onto his mouthpiece similar than Jimmy Smith, which is kind of ridiculous when you look at it. But then on the other corner, guys, a guy with a record of 51 wins and 1 defeat as an amateur, 11-1 as a pro, as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter. Not as an MMA fighter, but Jiu-Jitsu. Please welcome the 3-time world UFC champion and now fighting for the real title, Royce Gracie. So the commentators pointed out it's going to be a 30-minute time limit, and we're going to have a combined purse of $50,000. Also, we'll have another $50,000 for the tournament winner and the number 1 ranked. So that will be whether that's true or not. The third man with McCarthy in the ring with Kane, Wayne, Shamrock, and Gracie, their first ever super fight champion, and God almighty, this is great. Guys, I don't know what to say about this fight. Both guys study each other in the first minute of the fight. So, guys, I'm just going to go through each 5 minutes and just to tell you people what's been done for. So 30 seconds of fight, and before you know it, they both study each other. And then Gracie gets a big missed kick there. By the way, Ken Shamrock is wearing black underwear, by the way. And then takes him down, and Gracie trying to lock him up, this or that. And now he's on top of Gracie. And at this moment, now they're in the grabbing. They are putting themselves in the guard. And, of course, the commentators pointed out the guard and other moments. And, mostly here. They point out the longest bout in history, which is going to change soon. With 15-plus minutes, they point out about the Dan Severn fight again. And 1 minute into the fight, it's already becoming a doozy of a fight here. They both study each other as just having Shamrock being on top of Gracie and Gracie's legs wrapping around Shamrock's back as usual. And yeah, this is just the worst. They show a box screen picture of Royce Gracie's father's perspective outside of the ring watching, and then they show another guy's perspective, which is Shamrock's perspective outside of the ring. Yeah, they're going to regret being there for a long time, because at this moment we get big kicks, and Gracie throws out a 20-punch combination of using his knee to hit the ribs of Shamrock at the 2-minute mark. And yeah, to be honest, guys, the entire moment of the fight is just Shamrock on top of Gracie and Gracie trying to smother him. And then he gives him another 10-punch combination with his right foot, knee again. And man, this is just... I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. So Gracie is Gracie's the bottom for the entirety of this match. That's all I can say. He tries to throw knees. He tries to grab, wrestle. They both hug. Both guys are hugging each other, pointing their faces to each other and such, and their hands to their faces. Like, oh boy, the COVID is already coming sooner than you think. The 5-minute mark, they're already there. And also the commentators also pointed out at the 5-minute mark, because as they go to the 5-minute mark of the fight, because the commentator stated that we are 5 minutes into this bout, and they have a 30-minute. So they have a 30-minute time limit. And if they finish the 30 minutes, it will be a draw. That's what we thought. But of course, for some reason, they would decide to give us another 5 more minutes. When in reality, the fight was not 30 minutes, it was 31 minutes. And they gave us another 5 more minutes, making it 36 straight minutes. Which means that if MMA or UFC ever does give us like 7 rounds, they ever do a 7-round world title bout for 7 rounds, times that by 5 minutes, that's still 35 minutes, meaning that this record that we're watching here is already going to be broken for the entire century of this world until UFC, when UFC sinks in the future. So at this moment, around, I would say like the 7-minute mark, I would say. Probably the 7-minute mark, I would say. Both guys, again, Shamrock is finally trying to push Gracie to another ring and rope and this or that. And then finally they try to go for a grab here. Gracie tries to let go and Shamrock doesn't want to let go. And he finally lets go, pushes and kicks him. But Shamrock goes back down and puts him back himself on top again. And again, Gracie again. Like Gracie's trying to escape the move at this moment. It just seems like after what happened to Gracie in UFC 3, it seems like he's taking things more calm than he did in UFC 4. Don't get me wrong, he put in good efforts in UFC 4. And then we come to the 8-minute mark where they're still on the whole. They're still on top of each other the entire time. At this moment, of course, later in the match, like with everything going on, like that's all we would get. The entirety of the match, they're on top. Sometimes Gracie would not have him as much. Like at the 10-minute mark, his legs are spread away, and sometimes they're not wrapped around him. And sometimes you would have some punches once in a while and slaps for each other, but that's about it. And even around the time of the fight, like the crowd starts booing, and at this moment, it's like, oh, we just want the fight to end. And with everything going on, and so at this moment, it's just like the submission holds. Like with everything going on right now, like every single minute going by is already bad enough than it is. And like being underneath Royce Gracie at this moment is like, yeah, it's just, it was just so bad that it was hard for me to even, like, I just don't know what to say about this because, like, Ken Shamrock is on top of Gracie the whole time, and there's times that Gracie would use his right foot to bash Ken Shamrock's ribs or his back a lot of the fight as well. That's all you get. That's the only thing you get for this entire fight. It's just that's about it. So it's like no matter what you see. And at this moment, that's the only thing you would see of this fight. And so at this moment, they already passed the 15-minute and 49-second mark of Gracie in the Severn fight. The draw is getting closer than ever. And now the commentators are pointing out this is now the longest fight as of right now. They're past the halfway mark. And they might be showing little signs of fatigue, if mostly because at this moment, yeah, they're both tired, and that might cause anything else. And they also pointed out that still to come, Dave Bento and Dan Severn will be serving a sever, will be in the main draw for the finals. And at this moment, even though Dan Severn was the final person before this fight happened, so of course he has to relax and stay in shape because he needs to. They need to make sure that he's okay, or Dave Bento is okay. So I'm sure those guys are both now finally relaxed because there's actually a friggin' 36-minute fight happening as we're speaking, and it's not going to be good. So of course, you can't say much about that. So we come to the 17-minute mark of the fight, and the commentators finally pointed out, with the endurance of this entire 2 guys of the fight, with early boos have already been stopped. At this moment, like, wait, guys, the crowd is already in boredom. It's like, someone end the fight or just pull out something here, because at this moment, like, all they're doing is grabbing holds on each other, with Shamrock being on top of Gracie the whole entire time. Like, it's like Shamrock does not want to win this fight, or he even does nothing. Like, that's how bad this was. And for some reason, it just seems like nothing was going to come their way. It's like no matter what they were doing, they were just not doing nothing offensively. Like, guys, the problem was, guys, even Devin Haney and his last fight in Times Square last month ago was not an entertaining fight, but the problem is I just have problems believing that what these guys are doing is just not, I just don't get it. Like, we're at the 20-minute mark where we're getting a little bit of left hands and right elbows here or there, but yet again, and of course, Gracie puts more of his stomping on his right foot again and again and again, but yet again, like, it just seems like that there was just so much problems in this fight. Like, guys, people can call this one of the worst fights, but I just don't know what to say about this fight. It's just that there's just so much problems for everything. Eventually, there was a moment at 21 minutes before the 22-minute mark where Gracie tried to put his legs higher to try to wrap his legs around Shamrock's neck, but that was a fail. Mostly, there was more moments in time where anyone would have made one flawless mistake, but that guy still had fatigue and they weren't ready for their counterattack because they were already getting tired, smothering each other. Around that 22-minute, 23-minute mark, these guys are now throwing punches, grabbing their hair. Well, Royce Gracie doing the most of it, grabbing his hair. But there's times that even though Gracie tried to use his jacket, his white karate suit to hold himself from not letting go of the grip while hugging Ken Shamrock's neck, pretty much. And at the 23-minute mark, the early update, so at 23 minutes of the fight, the commentators pointed out that the Russian Bear has stitches on his forehead, which is good news, stating that they're working on Takhtarov's injured face against his fight against Dan Severn. As they, as said before, there was actually blood in the ring at the time. But the news is he's doing all right, even though he has stitches in the fight as they speak. So they point that out, that he's doing okay, while there's still like less than over 6 more minutes left of the fight. So they pointed out that the Russian Bear is doing fine. And we keep moving on straight into the 24-minute and the 25-minute mark as well. And now the commentators pointed out, with only 25 minutes of the fight, 5 minutes left to go for this super fight champion, Grace is chopping everything else he's doing some little slaps here or there, which the commentators pointed out. Again, like, the crowd is in disbelief that this is actually reality. This is turning into a boring snooze fest. I just don't get it. There's so much. Like, it's like both guys are so calm that they don't want to commit an error. Like the commentators pointed out that the 26-minute mark, like, will anyone commit an error? At this moment, it seems like they don't want to make that mistake. But Ken Shamrock has been on top of Gracie the entire time before the first minute of the fight started. They even talk about Elio Gracie when he was 13 years old in 1977. As the elder, talking about his career and time in the sport. But at this moment, the crowd, like 6,000 fans did not come to see this type of competition. Like, the crowd at the Independence Arena in Charlotte did not want to see something like this again. This was not a fight to be reckoned with as remembered. Like, they're still putting on grappling holds here or there. And I'm sure, in my opinion, Gracie, in my opinion, is doing most of the work here because he's throwing knees, he's throwing strikes with his right foot. Like, I'm sure, in my opinion, guys, if I was the referee and the rule is that the referee is the one to judge this fight, I would say that Gracie would have won this fight in 30 minutes. I wish they should have done that before. I wish they would have came up with that rule before this show started, because with so many crowd and booing, and with 1 minute left of the fight, they're ending to a draw, and the fans know that. And it's like, yeah. And Gracie is finally getting, like, he's finally has Ken Shamrock stuck and such. And at this moment, Gracie is putting in more offensive work than anything else, even though he's been the bottom for the entirety of the half an hour fight with Ken Shamrock. And with 10 seconds left of the fight, with everything going on, they continue with the fight. And the commentators pointed out that no one has stopped the fight. And the clock continues to run for another minute. And the commentators point out that this is interesting because, like, there is a time limit, but nothing has happened. And now they're realizing that something's up. Like, did someone forgot to change the time, or did someone forgot to put the clock in for one more minute or so? Because they would fight for another minute. And then until the 31-minute mark comes, we finally get the stop at that moment, and John McCarthy stops him at 31 minutes and 6 seconds of the fight. So for some reason, someone forgot, I guess. Gracie finally gets back up, and John McCarthy in corner, and they go forward a little bit. He helps out Gracie to strap out his belt to get his suit back underway, and I'm sure Gracie's father is now disappointed in him. And then, for some reason, for the super fight overtime, they give him an overtime for 5 more minutes. And they only get 1 minute break for all of that, to go back to the ring one more time for 5 more minutes. And man, oh man. So again, Gracie is stunning himself, throws right, throws left. He goes for a kick, grabs, and then finally he goes down again. And again, Shamrock is now on top of Gracie and finally puts the hold again for 20, not even 30 seconds. Not even 30 seconds. We get some headbutts from both guys, and now we have Gracie with a little bit of problems here, but now Shamrock is trying to headbutt him. We get some gash above the right eye of Gracie's eye. At this moment, Shamrock is trying to end it. He throws headbutts after headbutts after headbutts, and Gracie is trying to hurt him back as well. And you can tell that I think you can tell that Shamrock is tired of this. He wants, like, it took him over 31 minutes to finally realize, you know what? I should have done this a long time ago. Maybe he should have headbutted him a long time ago. At this moment, so Gracie finally is getting blood for the first time. We're at 2 minutes, and finally he's in the grab. And Shamrock is now throwing right punches to his temple right here. And at this moment, there's no way nothing is going well for them. Like Gracie's eye is swollen, get the grab, and Gracie is now the bottom again, as before. And both guys are in the mounted position, if that makes sense for you viewers. I don't say mounted position as much, and I don't know the key words for all of these type of things in the world of sports. Like, I keep forgetting that this should be a right hook, or people call this, like, I know what a jab is, but I keep forgetting what a right cross is, or a left cross is, or what a hook is. I know what an uppercut is, or a looping. Like, those words are hard for me to even comprehend when I talk about this stuff. So don't get confused when I say the top, all right? But yeah, at the 4 minute mark, again, they're both now wrestling each other, trying to get themselves back on their feet, just But yet again, they're not going to go back on their feet. Like at this moment, Shamrock and Gracie, I will say though, the last 5 minutes of the fight were pretty entertaining. I'll give them that. The last 5 minutes of the fight was entertaining, but it was all for nothing. Like Shamrock being the aggressor at this moment, more than Gracie was in 30 minutes, they pull themselves forward for everything else as best they can. But it was all for nothing. And at this moment, the camera cuts with, at the 5-minute mark, showing Gracie having blood right here to above his nose. A gash of blood coming from here to these eyelid right here. So with blood squirt right here, bottom here a little bit, and a lot of it right down here, drizzling with his blood right here as well onto his nostril. He's getting more blood than anything else. They cut to the 5-minute mark, and for some reason, John McCarthy stops the fight, and that's it. The fight ends in a draw. Yeah, and at this moment, the crowd in the background are not even applauding for this. Like, no one's the winner. Like, both guys hug each other, but even though it did stake, the commentators did point out there's lots of people clapping, and there's a lot of boos and claps, and calling this match a greasy mess, which is, I can't say much about that, but yeah. And then, of course, yeah, as said, they point out that the crowd doesn't like it, and I don't like it. And as said before, they check both of the eyelids, and Shamrock is walking around circles saying that he's the winner, parading in the ring, raising his arms in victory. But, of course, the commentators said there is no victory, and yeah, no wonder this was the end of the Gracie regime here. This was the end of everything for Royce Gracie and UFC. Guys, if there was a moment that Royce Gracie was the top at some times in this fight, we would have seen other stuff instead. Commentators pointed out 36 minutes and 6 seconds as was the time of this fight, and the bout ends in a draw. So yeah, people calling this a discrimination with Shamrock and And I say what you want to about this, but they do show us replay of the last minutes of the fight and the start of it. But yeah, I really can't like this fight anymore because, like, at this moment, no one understands. Like, they already point out the heart of the warrior and how both of these guys are champions, but no one won. That's the problem. It's such a huge waste of time, and I hate every bit of this. Like, Gracie leaves the ring first with everything in disappointment. The last time he'll be in UFC for a long time. Ken is hugging friends and such, putting back his robe, and they go back to the bracket where they show us the replays, the brackets of the tournament bracket, this or that, to quarterfinals, and then they show us the championship fight of the semifinals and the finals for the final two guys, and that's where we lead to the final. Well, anyway, guys, we're here to bring you our first fighter for the Ultimate Fighting Champion, David Bento. David Bento enters the ring first. He was a guy in an alternate bout, so he had to earn it after winning 21 seconds in the first fight against his first opponent. He goes 2 minutes and 13 seconds against Tom Medina. He's put out tough competition, being the top more than anyone else has in the tournament, considering the alternate bout might not be much to talk about. With the record of everything else going on here, with so much for negotiation and such, like, I'm sure the crowd and the audience were like, let's just get this over with, because it makes us wonder how the tournament became so entertaining than anything else. So they give us a promo of just David telling himself this or that. Similar, doesn't matter. From Canada, blah, blah. And then Daniel Severn comes in the ring. They do call him Daniel. But sadly, for some reason, can't say much about it. So yeah, Daniel Severn walks in with a gray shirt. Part of it is dark because he's sweating so much, or water, I guess. He got 1 minute 39 seconds to end the fight with Joe Charles, and 4:21 against the Russian Bear. The similar guy grabs onto his NWA World Heavyweight Championship belt and enters the ring and pronounces himself, "I'm going to fight. No one is going to stop me in the octagon, and I'm going to win." So we have two guys here. One that's the legend, the Beast, trying to get his revenge win to be in the ranks so he can be the #1 contender for a super fight. And Dave trying to be the first Canadian. At this moment, guys, UFC 5 tournament, I still legitimately say it is a championship fight just for the heck of it. I would say it is. It's still a champ, so we're looking for a new champion and a new person to be as for competition here. So who knows? So Ron Jeremy is the ring announcer for one last time of this entire show, and he announces out the 1988 Canadian team of the one and only 27-year-old David Bento. And then across from him, a guy that's the future, over 70 national, international titles on his game, from Sambo to freestyle, Greco-Roman wrestling, the NWA Alliance heavyweight champion at 36 years old, 6'2", 260, in Coldwater, Michigan, Daniel the Beast Severn. Almost looks like people are saying seven. But anyway, the ring card girls are back, and they put out their final. Well, they walk around the octagon one last time to put out their performances, and we're ready for the World Championship fight. And surprisingly, the finale ended pretty good. Both guys are wrestling each other for the first, and Dan pushes him to the ring of the octagon fence, and Dave tries to throw some punches to Daniel, and Daniel is trying to shove him to the fence as most as he could. He's trying to push Dan away from him, but Dan shoves him back to the fence again, just shoving him straight into the fence. And I'm sure the fence is already getting attacked, annihilated for the first time, with essential grappling to both of their feet. Daniel actually makes a huge error and tries to go forward, but then goes left, and then Dave tries to throw a couple punches, and now he has him shoved against the fence door of the octagon. With everything going on with so much strong competition, both guys have their arms stuck to each other. Both guys are wrestling each other not on the ground. They're just wrestling each other while standing up. So pretty much, and they've done this for 1 minute. And as they do that, and by the way, both guys are wearing shoes as we speak. And by the way, guys, have I forgot to mention about the fighters and other fighters in this show were barefooted, but some of them were wearing shoes? Yeah, guys, just to let you viewers know, shoes were permitted in UFC, but back in those days, you could wear shoes, but kicking, to be honest, guys, there was some controversies about kicking and such, so yeah, who knows? But yeah, so both guys are wearing shoes, just to let you know. Dave wearing black pants and black underwear and black knee pads for Dan. That's all you have to know. So both guys are getting wrestled each other. Dan is still shoving him right inside the fence, just trying to tire him out as best he could. And that's what you have to do. And coming at the 2 minute mark, as both guys, I'm surprised they're still standing up at this moment, just wrestling each other to the ground, if that's what you think they're doing. But no, they're putting everything in. Dan Severn is doing some good knee shots, with so much grappling and a little bit of knees and some punches once in a while. But yeah, both guys are wrestling each other as best they could. And just as they go to the 3 minute mark, Dan finally trips him, puts him to the ground. And man, oh man, he's finally putting in some grabs on him, just shoving Dave to the fence. There's a moment that Dave is trying to shove Dan away with his hand in a great position from everything else going on here. And the Canadian, I will say though, Dave is putting in a good performance in the finals, better than Harold Howard is doing. But of course, coming to the 3-minute mark, Dan Severn puts in the Americana. And Dave taps out at 3:01 or 3:03, and John gets off of him, or John gets Dan off of him, and Dan celebrates the win, and the crowd is finally over, and the entire team splashes water all over Dan, and the guy holding on to the title puts it around his neck. One of them is giving him a thumbs up, good job. And I'm sure the fans were happy that this show was over, because at this moment, after what we saw from the 36-minute fight, can't say much about it. Some of the fans are out there cheering out with one signs cheers. And at this moment, to be honest, guys, we had to have a good finale here. And then, of course, they give us another title, which has to be the NWA title or some other title that someone gave to Severn. Ron Van Cleef is also inside the ring as well. And Dan Severn's holding on to both of his championship belts. He's finally the champion of UFC 5. What a great story. He meets up with Ron Van Cleef and shakes hands. They both hug each other. What a great performance. The announcer announces the winner of the fight. And that's all we get. And by the way, guys, I couldn't find any information of ringside reporters or something commentating over the commentators or fighters. But yes, guys, Dave gets up, and I'm sure he's disappointed. The second Canadian fighter in UFC history is out, and another failure. $50,000. A guy with a red jacket signs Dan Severn's name without, not Daniel, just Dan, and gives him his April the 1st, 1995 check from WOW Promotions. When I try to look up what that is, of what WOW Promotions was at the time, but technically this was already the time of an end of an era, because, guys, I've already talked about this a few days ago. And like I said before, guys, because the information stated about the WWOW stated that the UFC event was the last with the involvement of UFC co-creator Rory and Gracie, because of the introduction of all time limits, which ran counter to his family of ethos and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, with the fighters that should go to a finish. Gracie and the partner of Art Davie later sold WOW Promotions of co-promotions of the event to WWO's partner of this Semaphore Entertainment Group with Royce Gracie. Also ended following that departure until UFC 60. Yeah. That's about it. Anyway, guys, the show comes to an end with Severn holding to the check, holding to the title belts, and that's it. The commentators get their final talks about this, saying how absolutely amazing it is, and that's it. After several months after the last fight, commentators point out their last word. All fans left the arena, and that's how the show ends. So, yeah, guys, that's all I have to say about this show. I'm already done talking about this. The show ends with Dan Severn hold on to the American flag. Congratulations to the winner. He's the more winner. And, Jeff Blatnick, Jim Brown, and whoever the other guy is, that's all we have to say. So thank you for watching, and see you next time. So I hope you viewers enjoyed this episode. This was pretty tough, but you know what? I got through it, and I'm done talking about this podcast, and I do not want to talk about UFC 5 again. But next time, UFC 6 will come straight to your backyard, ladies and gentlemen. But for now, my name's the Fox Wolf, and thank you for watching the Mr. Gloat podcast. See you next time.